Hello, welcome to the IPC webinar. You know, I was still in high school when IPC undertook many of their studies of Zulu culture and social organization. And it was only when I was in college as a sociology major that I read these works. And many of the researchers became my teachers as well in a cultural anthropology class. And so it was through these teachers, along with Father Lynch and Mayor Rosellis, that I saw Zulu. It was through their eyes that I saw Zulu and Mindanao. Now, one of those researchers was a graduate student named Gerard Rickson. He was then an oblate priest, and he was teaching at the Notre Dame of Holo College. And Notre Dame and IPC had this consortium called the Coordinated Investigation of Zulu Culture that launched many of these studies. And so one day, Jerry Rickson, before my graduation from college, approached me and said, "Ricky, would you like to spend 1 year of teaching in Holo at the Notre Dame?" I accepted very readily, not only because I really wanted to get out of Manila, but also because I felt it was be an adventure, and it was going to be a safe adventure because all those anthropologists from IPC came back from Zulu in one piece. So there was nothing for me to be scared of. So off I went to spend 1 year at 375 pesos a month teaching all sorts of subjects in Zulu, and what was to be a very memorable year of my life. And it was memorable because although Zulu was very different, and it was my first time to encounter Islam face to face, and for the first time to encounter Tausugs and Bajau and Samals, I did not get culture shock. And partly because all those studies which I've read about Zulu organization, about the ethnic stratification of the place, about the Bajau living on houseboats, about the socialization practices, all of that IPC studies framed my view of Zulu. And so I appreciated it more, and I made many friends with students and colleagues and so forth. And even up to now, even once a year, I meet all these other Ateneans who went there, like me, with other Holo people who are here, and we have a reunion once a year to relive the memories of the time. And that's why it's a bit hurt now for me. It hurts for me to see now that when I visited Holo last time, 3 years ago, I saw many tanks and many police, military stations around, and I had to be military escorted to go downtown to visit a mall. But this doesn't spoil all the wonders and the memories, the beautiful memories that I had of Zulu. And thanks to the IPC and the goodwill IPC gave me when I got to Notre Dame, because they were partners to begin with. But there was one thing, that IPC never taught me or never imparted. I did not see or hear or heard stories about love and courtship in Zulu. So one day, I was visiting a beautiful young lady who turned out to be a Muslim princess. And so one day, on my probably third visit, as I was walking towards her house, my male students stopped me in the middle of the street and said, "Sir, you cannot go and visit her." I said, "Why?" "Because she is a princess, and it is customary that on the third visit, you are supposed to propose marriage and give a dowry which entailed about 7 buffaloes or carabaos, whatever it was." I looked at my students and in shame turned around and walked back home, went to my room and cried. It was my first heartbreak. And shameful for me because I only had enough money to give a bag of lanzones for a dowry. But that didn't change Zulu. It was one heartbreak in a sea of many happy memories. And the heartbreak taught me a few lessons as well. And so for the heartbreak, and for the very good memories, and for the academic work that made me appreciate, understand, and keep Sulu in my heart, thank you, IPC, for that wonderful opportunity for me to grow as a person, as a social scientist, and as an artist as well. Thank you very much, and have a good time in this seminar.
Hello, I'm Mary Rosales, Institute of Philippine Culture and the Department of Sociology and Anthropology of the Ateneo de Manila University. I was asked to say what IPC has done in Mindanao, very tall order, because we have existed for 60 years and have been very much involved in many parts of Mindanao. So let me highlight something that's particularly IPC. When Father Lynch returned from the University of Chicago with a PhD and started the IPC in 1960, soon after that he was contacted by Bishop McSorley of Jolo, the Oblate Fathers, as to whether he could help them develop, research there. They had a school there, Notre Dame of Jolo College, as well as high school and grade school, I think. And most of their students were Tausug, some Samal, and probably not many Bajau, if at all, at the time. Those were the three major groups, and they felt they needed to know more about them. So Father Gerard Rickson, who was very interested in one of the movers and shakers of that idea that we have to know more about the culture and respect the culture of those peoples, was the one who helped facilitate the research that was done by students first from abroad and then later from Manila or other parts, whom we sent as part of the IPC as well as Social Anthro Department involvement in Sulu. They wrote their reports, which were often published in Sulu Studies, which was generated from that, became a very distinguished journal. There were certain, had H.R. Lo Nimo, Harry Nimo, who was among the first batch of students, continued in anthropology, came back, and for 2 years lived in Alepa, that's a boat of the Bajau, to live their lives and talk on the sea and write about them, which he did. Dr. Wilfred Arce did something similar for his PhD based on Jolo studies. And others went down there. Walden Bello, Ricardo Abad, who is now our artistic director, and many others. So while they benefited from being there and from Jerry Rickson's support, at the same time they gave back also in terms of the research that they were doing, publishing there or elsewhere, giving talks, teaching, and so on. So then Jerry Rickson eventually came to the Ateneo to get a master's degree in anthropology. He left the Oblates after that, I think, but always maintained the contact with them in Sulu, and in the context of the Southeast Asian Studies framework of involvement. He taught at the Ateneo for many years and wrote a significant number of publications. So students definitely benefited, in the long run. Let me just quickly switch to the second area of Bukidnon, which had long been a Jesuit area, you might say, because they had been missionaries there for centuries. Father Lynch knew a lot of the literature from there and wrote a seminal article on the anthropological data that was contained in the Jesuit letters of Mindanao, written by the early missionaries, I think in the 17th century. So he had many contacts there that the connections were always very good, with the missionary parts especially. The third is the Tasadai, which became a big issue because they were sort of discovered. So Manda Elizalde was promoting. The thing is, he was promoting them as a Stone Age culture because that was very exotic. But he did encourage Father Lynch and the National Museum to go down there, and they mobilized quite a number of social scientists to do very good research. They would come in and out so that they wouldn't overwhelm the local community. And although this became infamous as, is this a hoax? It turns out, of course, in the long run, it was very clearly said it was not a hoax. The hoax was when Manda, Lizal, they kept saying they were Stone Age to generate excitement internationally, but they're a very valid group. Lynch and Company did a lot of research for them in IPC. That was it. Thank you.